Welcome to Bridge to India's monthly update on developments on renewable power tender and policy fronts for the month of June. We start with tender updates. Total utility scale tender issuance in June came in at 2,894 megawatt, almost unchanged over previous month. But auctions were conducted only for 631 megawatt capacity, almost 80% lower compared to May. The first half of 2022 saw 7,219 megawatt of capacity auction, 11% down year-on-year. Indian corporates and PSUs have been the most dominant players, accounting for over 82% of total wins in the last 2 years. PSUs have been particularly active. Several PSUs active in the conventional energy space, including NTPC, NLC, NHPC, SJVN, and Coal India, have set ambitious targets and are bidding aggressively in renewable energy tenders. There were 20 new utility-scale tenders issued across multiple states. 7 of these tenders, aggregating to 2,667 megawatt, were issued in project development mode, and 9 aggregating 227 megawatt in EPC mode. In addition, 5 solar EPC sub-tenders with total capacity of 2,855 megawatt were issued by NTPC. 7 new rooftop solar tenders totaling 70 megawatt were issued in the month. There were only 2 project auctions, both in the state of Gujarat. Bid submission deadlines were extended for 8 tenders. Let us now look at details of key new tenders in the month. Gujarat's GUVNL issued a project development tender to set up 500 megawatt renewable capacity with 250 megawatt hour battery storage for supply of peak power. The project must have a renewable energy-based generating component, that is solar, wind or hybrid, and a storage component. Minimum 250 megawatt power must be supplied during 6 time blocks of 1 hour anytime between 6 to 9 am and 6 pm to 12 am. Developers are required to supply off-peak power at a fixed price of 2.29 rupees per unit and bid for peak tariff. Bid submission date is 30th July. This is the first peak power tender issued by a state-level agency. The tender will be watched with great interest as DISCOMs are increasingly interested in meeting peak power requirement, but commercial viability of storage solutions is still unproven. Maharashtra issued 4 tenders this month. The first is a 500 megawatt solar tender. The commissioning timeline is set at 15 months for plants being set up in solar parks and 18 for those outside solar parks. Maharashtra issued another tender for 1000 megawatt under the Agri-Feeder scheme. Benchmark tariff is 3.1 rupees per unit and projects can range between 2 to 10 megawatt capacities. The state continues to issue Agri-Feeder tenders despite very poor uptake in previous ones. In the last 1250 megawatt Agri-Feeder tender, for which auctions were conducted in January 22, only 335 megawatt capacity was allotted. Maharashtra's MSPGCL issued a 105 megawatt floating solar tender to set up 2 separate projects of 40 megawatt and 65 megawatt capacities at Irai Dam. Bid submission date is 4th August. Maharashtra and Gujarat also issued project development tenders under Component C of the Kusum scheme. MSEDCL tendered 500 megawatt capacity and UGVCL tendered 54 megawatts, both with commissioning timelines of 9 months. Looking at key new EPC tenders, Haryana Power Generation Corporation issued a 121 megawatt solar tender. Bid submission date is 8th August 2022. SECI issued a floating solar tender to install 30 megawatt capacity in West Bengal. The commissioning timeline is set at 12 months. Coal India issued 2 solar tenders to set up projects of 20 megawatt capacity in Jharkhand and 15 megawatt in Madhya Pradesh. Gujarat's GSECL issued a 15 megawatt wind tender with a commissioning timeline of 15 months. NTPC issued 5 EPC sub-tenders. The 1,255 megawatt tender in Gujarat is for capacity 1 by NTPC under IREDA PSU Tranche 3 scheme and 300 megawatt for capacity 1 under GUVNL Solar Tranche 14. Other subtenders were issued for 600 megawatt project to be set up anywhere in India, 200 megawatt in Madhya Pradesh and 500 megawatt in Rajasthan. Now turning to rooftop solar tenders, MPUVNL issued a 35 megawatt EPC tender in Madhya Pradesh with bid sizes ranging from 5 to 35 megawatt. Karnataka's BMRC issued a project development tender to develop 20 megawatt peak capacity in Bangalore for government offtake. Commissioning timeline is set at 18 months. Punjab Energy Development Agency and Electricity Department of Puducherry issued 5 megawatt EPC tenders each for government and residential offtake respectively. Haryana's HSVP issued a tender for 3 megawatt of rooftop solar projects to be set up at various locations in Haryana. Tender scope includes free of cost defect liability for a period of 5 years. Now we move on to auction results. Gujarat continues to lead in issuing and auctioning tenders. In the first half of 2022 alone, the state has issued 4 project development tenders totaling 1.6 gigawatt and completed 2 auctions totaling 1 gigawatt. In the 500 megawatt solar auction conducted in June by GUVNL under Tranche 14, Aditya Birla and Hinduja won 300 megawatt and 120 megawatt respectively at a tariff of 2.3 rupees per unit, and SJVN won 200 megawatt at 2.31 rupees per unit. Interestingly, the previous GUVNL auction in March 2022 saw similar tariffs. Gujarat continues to attract high bidding interest because of excellent payment track record of the state and strong developer appetite. Gujarat's GSECL awarded a 131 megawatt EPC contract to Prozil Infra at 8.43 billion rupees. Tender issuances are likely to pick up in the coming months to make up for the slow pace in the first half of the year. We expect around 4 to 5 gigawatt of project development tenders to be issued in the month of July. Based on extensions in bid submission deadlines, auctioning activity is anticipated to be muted at less than 1 gigawatt in July. This concludes the summary of key tender updates from June 2022.
Let us now discuss the major policies and regulatory updates from June 2022. Here are some key updates from the central government. No major updates were issued from the state governments. MOP approves uniform open access rules for renewable power. Ministry of Power has issued final guidelines for procurement of renewable power through different options, including open access and green tariffs. According to the rules, consumers with sanction load of more than 100 kilowatt may procure renewable power through open access or from DISCOMs under green tariff route or green hydrogen or RECs. All open access applications would be approved by state nodal agencies within 15 days after submission at a web portal developed by Central Nodal Agency. Renewable power procurement through open access would remain constant over a fixed number of time blocks during the day to be decided by state regulators. Banking is proposed to be allowed for a minimum of 1 month and for at least 30% of monthly power consumed from DISCOMs. Additional surcharge would be waived and gross subsidy surcharge increase would be capped at 50% over 12 years after project commissioning. For procurement through DISCOMs at green tariffs, consumers must specify share of renewable power they plan to procure a year in advance. DISCOMs would retain green attributes. The rules sound revolutionary in the current context. While certain restrictions have been placed on banking and scheduling, long-term clarity regarding project approvals and open access charges would be welcomed by developers and consumers. Unfortunately, these rules are mere guidelines for states, which would maintain final say in the matter. CERC notifies regulations to simplify allocation of transmission capacity. The central regulator has notified General Network Access Regulation that would simplify transmission capacity allocation procedure. The regulations are applicable to new renewable and energy storage projects of 50 megawatt and above, existing projects of 5 megawatt and above, and consumers with connected load of 50 megawatt and above. Project developers will no longer be required to specify duration of transmission access, or off-takers and their host regions while applying for transmission connectivity and access. Allocated transmission capacity may be used for short, medium or long term without any prior approvals. Developers are currently required to sign PPAs before they apply for final transmission connectivity and approval. The new regulation is a welcome move from CERC. It will significantly streamline approval process. C&I market would be a major beneficiary as consumers will be able to utilize transmission capacity across multiple procurement routes like long-term PPAs and green power exchange. Ministry of Finance levies anti-dumping duty on fluoro backsheets for 4 years. Ministry of Finance has notified levy of anti-dumping duty of up to $908 per metric ton on imported fluoro backsheets. Duty will be applicable for 4 years starting 15th June 2022. The duty is in line with similar efforts by the government to discourage imports of all intermediate products and promote fully integrated domestic manufacturing. In March 2022, DGTR had recommended levy of anti-dumping duty on solar glass. These measures are laudable, but in the short run will result in further increase in prices of domestic modules, which have already shot up to USD cents 40 per watt since PCD implementation. This concludes key updates from Indian renewable power market from June 2022. We hope you found this update useful. You can view all tender, policy and regulatory information on the renewable power sector in real time at India RE Navigator, a one-stop market intelligence portal for the renewable sector.